And we are live. Welcome to the Three Things with Dr. B today, January 9th. At the MuDojo, we believe that we are spiritual beings having a human experience and that we are ultimately intimately connected to one another, sometimes in ways we cannot really explain. Therefore, as we're having this conversation today with Zach, Three Things with Dr. B, we must recognize one thing. We don't know what we don't know. And sometimes we cannot anticipate, might I say, the positive impact we might have on someone else. And no, you don't need to be famous or make millions of dollars or have written books that are New York best-selling authors to make a difference to others. And I'm sure Zach will be a New York best-selling author one day. That's why we're here today. On this episode, like every episode, we will explore our life and our world through the lens of the three things and through the lens of Zach: serendipity, purpose, and humanity. Zach is a managing director at Acquis Consulting. That's how we met. He focuses on helping companies evolve through constant change by thoughtfully connecting strategy to execution. He's also a strategic advisor and executive coach to rising founders. Wink, wink, if you need help. I can attest to the fact that he is a work-life balance enthusiast. And over the past few years, we became friends, and I am so happy to have you today on the podcast.
Awesome. Well, I'm super happy to be here and super excited for the conversation.
Yeah, and so we're going to start right away. So, one thing that the people might want to hear is, how did we meet? But I like to say that's the way I like to interview people. One of the first questions I ask is, what is it in your life, in your whole life, all the series of events that have led you to be here today, interviewing on a, or being interviewed on the podcast? Yeah. Like, what happened?
Yeah, I mean, so we were talking about this a little bit, and when I was putting my thoughts together on, what I might even how I might even answer this question. I'm a deeply reflective person. The holidays are always a deeply reflective time. It's serendipity is a word I say all the time, So to think through.
So what does it mean? What does serendipity mean to you?
Well, serendipity is the realization that you can't plan life out. That life is about the cards that you're dealt and how you choose to play them. And when I look at the cards that I was dealt and the choices that I made to play them, sometimes I played my cards wrong, sometimes I played my cards right. Each was a learning opportunity that ended up, getting me here today and making me who I was, right? So, or who I've become. I was thinking about all of those different moments, right, that I might want to talk about. And
yeah, I think this analogy with the cards that you're talking about, how much cards you got distributed to you, it reminds me a little bit of the game of poker, because you make decisions along the way, and after a while, the cards you have in your hands are not the cards that were dealt to you in the first place.
Yeah.
So you have the power to change the game plan.
100%. I actually more often use the analogy of chess. I say life is a game of chess, and you play that game by choosing which conversations you enter and how, right? Because like nobody does anything alone. So like the first thing that came to mind is kind of random, honestly, but like I had to have a job since I was 13, and nobody was hiring a 13-year-old. So the only thing that, my parents had pretty much like strategically coerced me into the idea of doing was, going around the neighborhood and selling, lawn mowing and weed whacking and yard services.
And was that good? Like, how was your experience?
Well, so I draw up a flyer,
Nice.
And I go and I start knocking on doors, and I very nicely get, the first 6 doors shut in my face. And they didn't need yard work, right? And I come home and I'm all dejected, and I'm like, I don't like sales, and I don't want to do this, and I'm having my own little temper tantrum and my own moment. And my dad is like, all right, like, let's take a step back. You say you don't like sales. Well, I don't know what you think you want to do when you grow up. Maybe you want to be the head coach of the Eagles. Maybe you want to be a lawyer. Maybe you want to be a doctor. Maybe you want to be a janitor. It doesn't matter. If you're good at your job, you sell ideas. Everybody's in sales, Zach. And I was
wow. I wish I was told that when I was a kid.
Right? That's a great card I was dealt, right? Because it shaped how I began to think about things. How are things really sold? I come from a line of storytellers. My Uncle Ted is a novelist. I have always been a natural storyteller. I know it, but I've always liked to tell stories. And, that became something that I just knew I was comfortable with. So I ended up selling Cutco knives as one of my first real jobs. And I was good at it. I ended up selling New York life insurance as my first internship. I didn't get paid for it, but I sold a lot for somebody else. And
wow.
I realized that I always approached it as nothing gets done if somebody doesn't sell something, right? Like you've got to buy into whatever that idea is, right? So that kind of helped shape a little bit who I was,
there are so many of us who think sales is horrible, right?
I know.
And I remember, and I remember Tony Robbins also talks about how much, or Dean Graziosi, how much you are able to sell to your partner the restaurant you want to go to for dinner.
Yeah.
Right? It is a selling proposition because you can, or the movie that other friends, you want to, by the way, have you seen Red One? It's awesome.
You're selling ideas. In both of those situations, you're selling ideas. I might want to eat, sushi for dinner. I am going to my wife and selling her on sushi, right? And that's just like kind of how the world works, right? So like that, I think helped me approach a very open mind to what I even might want in a career. It's probably one of the backdrops as to why, upon graduating, I always knew I wanted to run and sell and build my own businesses. I learned from a pretty early age that I was probably somebody that didn't beat to somebody else's drum, kind of made my own beat, which naturally found me in consulting because it was a way to try many, many different things as fast as I could to figure out what I liked and what I didn't like, So I kind of
pretty versatile job. Exactly. I really like the fact that your dad kept that open mind in terms of, you could be a lawyer, you could be a doctor, you could also be the janitor. I mean, that is so empowering for a kid, right? That you can really choose what you want to be.
Yeah. And I think it's like, whatever those examples even were, he threw me at that day. The point was like, doesn't matter what your job is. You're in sales if you're good at it.
So I want to reflect on you're a consultant, and that's how we met, right? Because I was your client, and it's just you were not the typical consultant. Let me just say that.
Yeah.
I guess that's why we're still here today. I mean, that's part of my serendipity with you, right? I mean, we connected right away. I remember standing on stage, talking to about 200, 300 people.
Yeah.
And Zach, so I'll tell our audience right now, Zach, it was in the middle of the audience, and I was talking about strategy and how, and you have an audience that, they have to be there. It's not like they're all excited. And I talk about how strategy is about not just plans and business, but it's certainly about making choices, and particularly choices of things not to do. Yeah. And I was looking, and I found this huge smile in the audience, like so enthusiastic, and it just energized me. And then we happened to have lunch, and then that was the beginning of the end.
Well, I honestly love to hear that, because I had no idea I energized you, right? I'm just sitting there nodding along because somebody is, speaking my language. That's one of my diatribes is we have been sold as a society and across the entire business, no matter what industry you're in, that strategy is a plan. We've traded trade-off decisions that help improve differentiation, which is what strategy is,
right,
for a plan and a tactical plan and a vision 2030 and this is exactly what you should do. And it's take that textbook and throw it out because it doesn't work. It's why you have a consulting firm every single year rewriting your strategy, because you put all your eggs in one basket. So like I that is like how I've built the consulting business that I run right now. It's how I operate in life. But it was one of those things that was like, oh, she's got it. Because that was pretty early on in our relationship, right?
Very early. I don't think we had even talked.
Yeah, we barely even knew each other yet. But I was like, oh, she's got it. She's right. Because it's not, most leaders don't, necessarily lead with that as their definition of strategy. A lot of the work that I do is help restructure large, complex organizations and help them set their strategy and then put their operating model together to execute against it. And a lot of times, and this is not to punch at any of my clients that I work for, but I will go into a leadership room and my slide will be, what is strategy? Because if you line those 10 leaders up, you will get 10 different answers. Strategy does mean many different things to many different people. Same with innovation, same with transformation, same with digital, same with most of these buzzwords that have grown outside of themselves. And it's helpful to get back into like, what are we actually talking about? Because if we don't know what we're talking about, then we're talking past each other, not to each other. And that's why we keep spinning around on this thing,
right. Yeah. And I think that's what really made a difference for me. That's why I think you're a super consultant, because you don't give in to the status quo. You question things. Yeah. I mean, it's the way to transform organizations, but you're doing it. And a lot of people say they do it, but they don't really do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's again, like that's part of the path, right? Because I stumbled into consulting at the largest consulting firm on the planet. And I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was an open book. I was a sponge. And you learn a lot of what to do from good leaders. And you learn just as much, if not more, if you're looking for it, from what not to do from bad leaders. And I had a lot of those types of experiences. My first ever consulting project right out of school, I was told I had to grow a beard because they wanted to build me at a manager rate and put me right in front of the client. My second project, again, that was a procurement strategy for a life sciences firm. The second project was for one of the largest fast food companies, right? Completely different industry, largest fast food companies doing a customer loyalty strategy. My manager was fired for negligence. 3 weeks into the project, I ended up taking over and running the whole thing.
Oh, that's great. Wow.
I kept finding myself in these situations that I just built this brand as a problem solver. And from thing to thing to thing, I mean, there's a lot of awesome opportunities and experience that consulting can give you, right? Yeah. I have worked with C-suite executives at 5 of the largest 10 life sciences firms. I've worked at 2 of the largest healthcare hospital systems. I've worked at 1 of the 3 largest distribution businesses.
I don't think I even knew that about you. That's awesome.
And again, like that's just healthcare. 2 of the largest beverage and snack companies on the planet, 2 of the largest telecom companies on the planet. I've hit almost every industry because I was this problem solver that went place to place.
Okay, so this is a unique, insightful position that you have.
Yeah.
Of all these companies between the healthcare and fast food and all, like, do you see common threads, common trends? Is it all the same bullshit in every industry, or?
Yes, just different flavors. One of the things, so 4.5 years into me being at, Accenture, I found myself I didn't have a life. I was a complete workaholic. I didn't know any other way. I've always poured myself 150% into everything that I do. And I genuinely had hit rock bottom. I didn't really I had a senior leader ask me, she came back from a client dinner. It was like a Thursday night, and I'm the only one in the office. I've been the only one in the office for a while. I completely lost track of time. It's like 11:30 at night. She came back, I think, to get her bag or something. And she was also my mentor at a time, one of the good leaders I learned from what to do, right? Mm-hmm. But she knocks on the door. She's like, dude, what are you doing? Why are you still here? And I was like, oh, wow. Yeah, lost track of time. I got to get out of here. She's like, hold on, slow down for a second. Answer me this question. What do you spend your time thinking about when you're awake? Like, if you had to break that into a couple of categories, what do you think that would be? And I was like, I started just running through a business case. Well, I wake up at 6 a.m. I do this, I do that. No, shut up. That's not what I asked you. I'm serious, Zach. I think it's 100% work. And we don't.
There's only one category. She wanted you to realize that.
We don't pay you for that. Life is more than just that. And you got to go and figure that out. And I genuinely didn't have an answer. So I ended up like, it was this moment of a low point, but it helped me like build myself. I am a living framework. Everything has to have a thesis. My mind works in frameworks. So I built myself these frameworks that I now use with my clients, that I use to structure and think about the world. But you ask me, across all these different industries, is it all the same crap? The answer is yes. And the defining thing I see all the time is that the urgent will always trump the important. For the last 25 years, we have been built on what I believe is a lie that everything, look, incentive drives action. Show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome. Charlie Munger, Michael Scott, Zach Fink, right? Like I truly believe that in terms of how the world works. But we operate on an annual operating plan. If it's not in the annual operating plan, if it's not in the AOP, we do not give a crap about it. And I see company after company focus just on what's in front of them. This transformation and that transformation and this transformation, all disconnected. Their evolution is happening to them.
Yeah.
They're evolving. It's happening to them. They are not managing it.
Like life is happening. Some people say my life is happening to me and they're not taking charge, really.
And that's exactly how I think about it, right? Because I take literally my frameworks is you take like new age growth strategy concepts and you can apply them to your own life, your individual. There's this dichotomy and it lives within every consultant almost that I've ever met. Is all we do all day is we use structured thinking and critical thinking and frameworks to help other people, our clients, make decisions, and we never turn it on ourselves for our own career, ever. We never slow down to actually ask ourselves the tough questions. One of my theories about the world is that we are so oversaturated with information. We're
gonna go back to that, but I want to reflect around what you said around the short term, like making strategy for 1 year. Mm-hmm. That has been a real problem in healthcare, particularly when you know that the payers are looking at the outcomes for 1 year. They don't really care after that because the patient might not be their clients in the next annual fiscal year. And it's the same thing when we do planning for our own life. And that's why I don't like New Year's resolutions. Because you're doing a plan for 1 year, but your life is not 1 year. Right. And also the problem is that the brain very quickly is able to criticize a 1 year plan. And pull you back with fear and self-talk and all that stuff.
100%. I think a lot of people don't have the deep conversations to get to know themselves, to really challenge themselves as to why and what they want. And I think that also applies. It's why when people aren't happy at their job, they just go on LinkedIn looking for the next job without realizing that they should slow down and ask themselves what they even want in a job. The same thing happens to companies.
Yeah.
They've got to hit their metrics. Most companies, especially when they're public, they need to do this. This is their plan. They've got to hit their plan. What levers can they pull to hit their plan instead of stepping back and saying, what are the strategic trade-off decisions that will position us no matter what the world throws at us. Instead of putting all our eggs in this basket, right? How can we create a diversified portfolio of opportunities so that no matter what the world throws at us, we're there for it? You know?
So when those companies are listed on Wall Street, for example, how much of that is linked to the shareholders and and the way the economy is built in this country?
Yeah, I mean, I
Or in the
truly
world?
believe that incentive drives action, and the only incentive that drives our society is profit and shareholder value, because we sold to the world that it was shareholder value above all else. Like, this has been going on for 20 to 30 years. And I see us make all of these decisions. I mean, many companies that I've worked with have a financial scorecard and a non-financial scorecard. No one
Yeah.
cares about the non-financial scorecard. It's like our politics. If the
So
economy
what do you think? How do we change that? I mean, all the conversations we've had together, and we've had many over the years,
yeah.
you always come up with, again, challenging the status quo, finding new ideas,
Yeah.
like, stumbling
Yeah.
across any option. So tell me more about that. Like, what can we do?
Yeah. I mean, I think we have to build we have to get back to the basics of what strategy actually is, one, right? Because if you keep thinking that strategy is a plan and a scorecard and a set of objectives, then you're not contemplating the decisions that are in front of you that you need to be managing effectively. Two, we need to get away from the word transformation. Transformation is in every single boardroom, and it's not a bad word. It's just, it assumes a start and an end, and change is constant, and change is ever
I love
increasing.
that.
So
I love that.
that's why I say, like, companies are operating off of this scorecard and this list of transformations, but they're not necessarily looking at how those transformations will work together to turn them and help them evolve as a company with the world that is growing around it, right?
Yeah.
So, like,
How often do those companies put a transformation project up and running, and then it starts lagging over a couple of years, and then after 2 years, no one remembers exactly what the vision was for the first
yeah,
in the
it
first
happens all
place.
the time, and it's not the pace of that is speeding up too. I mean, I have clients right now that will come to us and, hey, we need help driving, and executing the change and the transformation management for this transformation that we've invested in. And I'll be like, okay, why? Why are we doing this? How's it tied to the strategy? And they'll be like,
But they said,
yeah.
the board said,
Genuinely, one of the first things we've had to do, this has happened 4 times just in the last year for big, massive, expensive initiatives, is step back and run a value prop alignment exercise. Because, again, I want to be in the business of coordination. And most companies, their main problem is they can't get out of their own way and their own politics, because they haven't aligned the incentives against what they all should be rowing against. It goes
and
back to
how do they react when you come and say what's
they're like, okay, sure. I mean, I guess I'll show up to this workshop, and then after it, they actually have everybody aligned because everybody put their voice into it. We were able to facilitate hard conversations to get to the bottom of what actually needs to be done, and then challenge them in ways to think outside the box. It's like it's the same conception. A lot of leaders love benchmarks, right? And they want benchmarking. But even if you sit directly next to this competitor, that does not mean your secret sauce and what your strategy is the game that they are playing. Even if you're competing against each other, you've got to run your own race because you have your own competitive differentiators that are different.
Yeah, and also, how can you innovate if you just listen too much to the benchmark, right? You have to think outside the box a little bit.
We have driven so much homogeneity in every industry. It's a backdrop to why there's so much consolidation. It's because every company is the same, and it's a lot like of consulting's fault. It's because most companies, and I will directly say that I am not in the business of prescribing solutions, because you as the executive, you need to make the decision. I'm not going to be here to carry it forward. You are. So
We'll take accountability.
my job is to help you lay out the trade-offs and make the most informed decisions as possible. But most of the time, what people are buying and what people are selling is, hey, you need to transform. I just did this for your competitor down the street. I know exactly what you need. I know your business better than you do. Here's a beautiful—
And I have the 150 slides for you already.
Yeah, exactly. Here's a beautiful deck. Thanks for your $1 million. See you. Goodbye. You know? And I used to argue with my MDs till I was blue in the face, because why are we pitching something that I know could never be implemented? So the other thing that we need to get way better at is designing with the end in mind. Mm-hmm. We have completely separated the concept of strategy and change. Because change, just like I said before, strategy, innovation, digital transformation, these words mean too many things to too many different people. Change management is like bastardized as a term. Mm-hmm. People just think it's a couple of communications in a town hall. Change with a capital C is everything that the company does. And it starts up top at the very first strategy conversation. We need to be thinking about how these trade-offs we're making might impact our business, our clients, our customers, our consumers, whatever it is. But a lot of times it's just financial based. It's, well, what's going to move the dial? What are we going to do here? Oh yeah, can we sell that to our people? Yeah, I think so. While we're sitting up top on our pedestal and we have no idea if we can actually sell that to our people or not, or whether we can implement it or not. Which is why most transformations fall down, because they've failed before they even got launched.
Yeah.
So like that's what I'm trying to do, and how I'm trying to flip the perspective. You know, you talk about purpose. I'm trying to get us away from the urgent trumping the important and us just barreling forward, instead of us looking at it as we are evolving. Change is constant. It is the only rule of thumb, and we need to start looking at the world that way and changing how we manage our business to do that, you know?
Yeah, and that reminds me of our first conversation over lunch. And over every time we've talked, every time you are energizing, not just me, I'm pretty sure you're energizing a lot of people around you. But it's this way of looking at things much more holistically, with much more altitude. And I'm like that too. So I think that's why we resonate quite a bit. I just to be very like down to earth, and for the sake of humor a little bit. Earlier you said, your first boss asked you to grow a beard.
Yeah.
And I noticed you have a beard today. I mean, what's the deal here? You didn't have a beard all the time, right?
Well, my facial hair
is a 2025 thing, or what's going on?
My facial hair has become a running joke. We could try to psychoanalyze it and say, oh, maybe I feel like I need facial hair but I think you've seen me with a mustache. You've seen me with a big beard. You've seen me clean shaven. What's on my face is completely dictated by my wife.
Oh, interesting.
It's gone. If she can't deal with the mustache anymore, it's gone. And then guess what? It's back 5 days later, because that's what happens to my face. So right. The facial hair now is like, but I do remember that specifically is like, because I just shrugged it off until the girl I was dating at the time was like, you should shave your beard. And I was like, I can't, I didn't really even think about it until I realized that I had been told I had to,
So is that what it is, that the beard, the fashion for a man is a decision made by the female partner?
No. Well,
okay. No, because, healthcare, we know that the mom is usually the one making decisions in healthcare in the household. I mean, is that the case for the beard?
No, I think it's just that I have been on this mustache kick, and my wife does not like it. So she gets to call the shots as to how long it's there. But no, I mean, that's one of the things I was reflecting on as the first start of a series of interesting experiences that have you, grow, whether they're good
Yeah.
or bad.
So speaking of growth and serendipity, when I met you, you were not married. I think you were already together, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I mean, a
yeah,
lot of things happened in the last, what, 4 years or something?
yeah, yeah,
So tell us more about the personal
yeah,
side of serendipity.
yeah. I mean, sometimes things come together. I mean, like I had hit so Jill. I mean, not that everybody needs to know this, but Jillian and I met a decade ago now, and we were friends, right, through somebody I went to college with that she grew up with, and then she knew where I stood. She always knew that I was interested, right? But timing never worked out, and then right as COVID hit, something clicked for her. We had a conversation, and then we were full on dating. So it just
Oh,
like
wow.
snapped in. But yeah, I've gotten married to the love of my life. I in that time, early on, I hit the ejection button from what I thought was an ejection button from consulting. I thought I was done, and I was interviewing for seed or Series A funded startups to, as a chief of staff or a chief operating officer to help somebody run and scale their own business before I end up trying to do that myself. And I took a couple of boutique interviews to just brush the dust off. I entered the
Mhm.
interview with our now president, of Acquis with a thanks, but no thanks. And he kind of broke down to me the uniqueness of Acquis, which is, and I read this back to him, but we're not just in the business of advising businesses, we're in the business of building them because we have a track record of identifying niche practices, scaling them. Oh, wait, there's something here, branding them separately and selling them off. So I was like, maybe I can have my cake and eat it too, huh?
So it
And
resonated, the value of the company resonated.
yeah, well, what really happened is another person for my first project. So I'm like, oh, wait, you know what? Maybe I'm interested in this. And I start looking, do I know anybody at this company? Because Acquis is not that big, right? When I started 4 years ago, we were 90 people. Now we're 160, right? But I was like, oh, wow. Okay, Chris McDermott. Him and I were in the trenches together on one of my first projects ever. I haven't talked to him in 3 years. Let me give him a call. And he's like, dude, if you're still you and you want to set the world on fire and you want to do big things, right? If you want to do big things, you could definitely do that here. But me, I'm about to have my first kid, he says, and I just want to do good work and have balance in my life and like build a family. And I was like, dude, that is the greatest sales pitch for a professional services firm that's ever existed. They should give you my referral bonus. I'll see you in a couple weeks, right? But I didn't have a mandate of any kind to go and build anything specific, right, at Acquis. But, serendipitously, 7 days into me being there, we got a cold call from our website from a healthcare giant needing an operating model strategy. I built a deck. I built a deck, and 2 days later, right, sold it, and it's been a rocket ship since. So there's a lot of serendipity. I had no idea that was going to happen. I mean, talk about serendipity personally. I had hit the ejection button on New York. Both Jillian and I had. It was just the economics of living in New York City is not sustainable.
Yeah.
A whole different conversation, but we decided to look at moving back to Philadelphia. We're looking at different houses. The last house we're going to see for the day, my family meets me there because we're going to get lunch after. It ends up being the house that I'm sitting in right now. We walk outside the door, and across the street, there's a house for sale. My little brother had been in the market for a one-bedroom. We walk through that house. We both put offers on houses across the street from each other, and now I live across the street from my little brother. So
that is wonderful.
Serendipity is just something that happens to people, and I embrace it. I love it, right? Because it's all about like, okay, I just got dealt this card. Am I going to use it?
Yeah,
You
well,
know?
you need. So this is an important point, though. You get dealt the card, and a lot of people see the bad cards, right? And sometimes
Yeah.
you get dealt a good card and you don't see it because it's hidden behind the other one.
I would say most people don't even recognize that they're playing the game. Most people
Yeah.
don't even recognize that they're holding cards and that they're in the poker game. They have no recollection or warrant to look at it that way. It's the same thing of like, Chris Voss saying that every conversation is a negotiation. Like, you've checked into the game. If you don't realize you've checked into the game, you're obviously not going to score as many points.
Right.
So, like, I believe that life is about seeing the opportunity and then having the courage to act on it. And most people, they don't even see the opportunity because they're not looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a whole nother bucket of people that they might see it, but they're told that they're supposed to stay in this lane or whatever's going on. They don't act on it.
Yeah, you got to believe. You got to believe that you
Yeah.
have these opportunities. You got to believe that there is a game and that you have a play in that game.
100%. But it starts with like the realization of like, okay, like it's the same thesis that I have around like people need to really spend time looking at themselves and having conversations with themselves and figuring out why and what they actually want. And it's not about, so you talk about like, what is your purpose, right? Is one of the key things in this conversation that we're talking about.
Yeah, I think it's a good segue into it.
And my answer is nobody should put all their eggs in one basket. Most people are told that, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they're pushed into this, I got to build this career. Okay. I've spent 8 years as a consultant. I've got to be an MD now, And I don't believe that, just like I wouldn't advise a company to do the straight line path strategy that's been going on for years and years and years, that instead you need to look at your business, optimize your core, and invest in adjacencies and brand new things you're not in so that no matter where the world takes you, you're set up for success. The same thing can apply to your career. And this is one of the frameworks I built myself, because when I was in a hole like 5 or 6 years ago, whatever it was that I was alluding to earlier, I didn't know why. I hadn't had those conversations with myself. I was struggling to find purpose. I believe that we are, struggling.
How did you get into that conversation then? Did you get help?
I was.
Or you just touched the bottom of the pool and.
Here's what actually happened. I was asked that question of, what do you spend your time thinking about when you're awake? And I didn't have an answer. And, that leader boldly told me to take the day off and figure it out. And I woke up, I walked my ass to Staples because I'm a very visual person. I mean, behind me is a whiteboard wall, and I bought myself a whiteboard. And it was even just taking that day off was an experience, because I walked into an apartment that I had moved into 3 months ago that my roommate had like fallen out of. So there was literally nothing in the apartment. It was a TV, a couch, and a bed.
So you literally took the day off and found yourself in one empty studio and put that whiteboard
what is
on
my life? It's like a sitcom. Like, what is my life? But the first thing I did was I started breaking it down. Okay, what are those compartments? What are those components of my life? Work, over invested in. Family and friends, under invested in. Love life, didn't exist. Hobbies, what are those? Physical and mental health, in the trash can. I had to rewrite what I wanted to do and how I wanted to spend my time. The first thing I do with my executive coaching clients is I say, hey, there's 168 hours in a week, and we're about to have an uncomfortable exercise. How many hours do you think you work a week? Right? And I'll just like recall one of the conversations I had with one of my closest clients. He goes, probably like 70. He runs his own class action law firm. He's, and I was like, okay, sure. And how many hours a night do you sleep? He's like, I'm good on 5. I'm like, no, you're not, but we'll circle back to that. Like 35 plus 70 is 105. So you are already 63 hours left for the rest of your life in each week.
Wow.
And we break it down further. And he had like something like 15 hours to spend with his wife and his daughter, you know? And that happens to everybody. So I was starting to break down into compartments. That's the first exercise I did. Was like, okay, I had to reset my goals. The next one was, all right, I've been spending the last 2 years pitching growth strategy to the largest companies on the planet, right? It starts with, what is your core as a business? And how are you going to optimize that core? Like Pepsi sells soda. How are you going to optimize that core? And most companies still today, actually, they pull cash out of that core. They invest it all back into the core, right? All about what they're doing right now. Instead, you should be looking at and investing in proactively. You should be optimizing this, pulling cash out, and investing in adjacencies, things that you have a right to win in because of what you're good at today, but you're not in yet. And the third horizon, 10 years down the line, things you're not in right now and you don't have a right to win in, but that's where the world is going. And we need to think about those too.
Yeah.
That same concept for a business can be applied to your own life. What is your core?
Exactly. Yeah.
What is your core? Every person is a combination of the things that they know and the skills they use to apply. So you start really fleshing out what that is. And then the hardest thing to do is looking at the last horizon. You write headlines of the future for yourself. In 10, 15 years, pick a publication. What do you want that to say? And it doesn't have to be, it shouldn't just be one thing. So like some of my headlines, because I do this exercise and I manage this exercise for myself. Some of my headlines is, a local publication wherever I live at the time writes about how Zach and Jillian have lived till they're 100. It has nothing to do with my career, but it's a big purpose for me and it affects how I want to live my life. Wanting to run.
I love that headline idea. The metaphor is very powerful.
Yeah, because you shouldn't be just writing one.
It means it's what you project for your own self, but it's also a headline is public. It's what people are going to see as well. It's not just internal.
What would you be proud of accomplishing? And it's not just one thing. It can't just be one thing. And I have 6 or 7 that have stayed on the board for a while. Some of them are big. I'm not going to do all 6 or 7. No chance. But if I even did one of them, it'd be a really purpose-led life. And that's where...
Can you share some of those?
Yeah. I mean, I have spent a good amount of time working across healthcare. We talked about earlier, how the world needs to get way better at coordination. We're terrible at it, right? And one of the things is, I've worked across life sciences and healthcare distribution and provider systems and healthcare systems, right, of actual last mile of care. And these are super complex systems. Mm-hmm. And almost nobody is looking across the whole thing of how it's connected. Almost nobody. I would love to help shift healthcare from reactive to proactive because a story that brings us to life is somebody very, very close to me went into heart failure, and that person had 4 different doctors. One that knew all about the arteries, one that knew all about the machines that would keep him alive, one that knew all about blood pressure, and one that knew about the skeletal function of the heart. And they all studied this deeply, ran their own practices, didn't really talk to each other.
Yeah, medicine is very, very siloed. Because we talk about silos in companies, but really healthcare is a big one.
But because it's so complex, and that's how we've structured ourselves so that we can deal and understand that complexity. But I think we're at a point where we need to evolve individually, as organizations, and societally to get way better at looking across, to get way better at driving connection and coordinating. So that's a theme that runs through many. I want to run and sell and build my own companies that are impact driven. I want to help define what impact driven actually means, because it shouldn't just be tied to financials, and it shouldn't just be tied to the environment. There are things that are net good and net bad, and we should understand what those are, right? So like that's just a taste of a couple, but because I know what I think I want to do, it allows me to then get much sharper on the day-to-day, on the decisions in front of me right now. When I get dealt a card, sometimes it's a real bad card. It could be a card that messes my whole game up, but I know how to deal with that card because I know where I'm going.
Yeah.
Right? Makes me a better player.
Yeah. So coordination is key.
Yeah.
How do we help people do that? Not think in silo, but like look, and I will throw the AI in there in the basket, because one of our conversation, I think was a year and a half ago, was all about AI, and at the time not everybody was talking about AI. It was seeing AI in front of their screens all the time, but now it's there. So it was predicted to be there, and it's there. Yeah. So if humans need to look at the world through the lens of coordination and transcending all these silos, how can we use AI to our benefit?
Well, yeah. So AI is a very interesting thing to bring up in this context. I was one of the first people kind of really speaking about AI when it first hit the ground, because
you were the first to tell me, and I watched that YouTube video that was kind of scary.
Yeah, well, that you're probably referring to the Center for Humane Technology's the AI dilemma.
Yeah,
and actually, like, what they talk about is exactly what we're talking about now. Is we need to slow down to speed up. And what I mean by that is every new technology creates new classes of responsibility, right? They give 3 rules of technology to apply to how we should think about AI and how we need to coordinate AI so that it works for us, not against us, right?
Yeah.
But every new technology creates new classes of responsibility. It's like what we didn't need the right to privacy and we didn't have the right to privacy until Kodak created the disposable camera. And then 5 years later, Brandeis wrote it into law, right? We didn't need the right to be forgotten until the computer was created, right? So the next rule is, if that technology confers power, it starts a race. And the third one is, if that race isn't coordinated, it ends in tragedy. And it's what you've seen right now with social media. We knew that we needed data rights, individual data rights, a decade and a half ago, before Facebook really blew up. We knew it.
Yep.
They knew it. We didn't do anything about it because we didn't have the coordination mechanisms. It's really, really hard to get everybody in the room and line up, because our current societal function and structure pins each other against each other, right? And for us to create rules and regulations so that we can coordinate,
we have to come together to the same table.
We have to come to the same table. Yeah. So, like, one of the things I say all the time is a bad system will always beat out a good person, no matter how great that person is. It'll happen. We need to really take a hard look at our systems, and we need to think much more clearly around what our strategy is. We don't have a strategy. We don't have a clear one. I couldn't tell you what America's strategy is right now. I couldn't tell you what our purpose is either, because the American dream doesn't really resonate with people anymore. So, like, there is this whole thing where, like, you can look at every concept we've talked about individually for the person, organizationally for the business, and societally. And they're all related. To solve these things, we need to look at the world differently and think about how we coordinate, right? And really break down what those levers are, those incentives are, to stop the barriers of coordination, to enable us to do so. So it's a huge question. I'm not going to say I've got all the answers. No chance. But
sometimes I think, if other life forms exist out there, intelligent ones that are looking at us from afar, They must be thinking, what are they freaking doing with themselves and their planet? They're not that many on this little rock in the middle
Yeah.
of their solar system, and they're doing nonsense. Like, we
Yeah.
have actual wars going on
Yeah.
while we're thinking about going to Mars at the same time. I mean, it's mind-blowing.
Well, it's like it's interesting to like try to do an exercise where you step back and you take a macro view, where you look at things over like a millennium. We can
Yeah.
get super stressed out about like what is going on right now in the world, but maybe things actually naturally need to get worse before they get better, because we have never ever proactively driven change.
Yeah.
Something has to happen. Tragedy strikes and then we change. And maybe one of our evolutions is to enable us and build a skill set around getting more proactive, around looking at things in an evolution cycle. That every strategy drives action through your business across your operating model that creates business outcomes that goes back into strategy that flows. That all these things need to be managed over time, that they shouldn't be disconnected. And if we build that skill set individually and organizationally, ultimately we'll get somewhere where we can actually manage the problems of today and tomorrow more effectively than we do today, which is why I want to sell that concept, that idea to the world.
So we live on a planet like a company that has turnover, right? We grow old, and then we have the next generation, and is like this huge turnover. So the coordination also needs to be transgenerational, right? And what about the education system today? What are your thoughts about that?
I think the education system also has the same bureaucratic barriers that we talked about in life sciences or healthcare, that we've spent a long time, because naturally from our evolution, we needed to build these systems to drive really deep understanding of what these subjects were.
But now the level of complexity of knowledge is so high.
Exactly.
There's no way one person would know all the things there is to know about the history and science. And
one of the things that AI is doing is it's democratizing expertise. It's democratizing access to knowledge.
Right.
So it can potentially enable us, and will, I believe, evolve us and how our brains work, because it will become embedded in how we work. Again, it's a much longer term thing. You're still seeing the LinkedIn posts that are professional services is dead. Nobody needs marketers anymore. All this hyperbolic crap that doesn't actually exist. But over time, what AI will do is it will automate portions of a job. So if it automates 40% of what a marketing team can do today, then you no longer need 100 marketers, you need 60. And that's what will happen in the next downturn.
Yeah, and the 60 might do a much more interesting job.
Yeah. And I think what AI could unlock is it could unlock coordination by providing access of deep knowledge to way more people.
Absolutely. I mean, the internet started doing that already.
It did. The internet provided access, or organized it, but didn't put it at your fingertips. Didn't enable you to have a conversation with it, right? And I think the access to information, and as AI gets better and better, it enables us to design things where I have a deep medical background as I work through this business problem that affects this deep medical background, and we're able to connect these things across.
But you see, there's going to be a need to change the mindset there, particularly the ownership of certain knowledge, because there's already some AI studies that show that with the help of the AI, the diagnostic rate is much more accurate than done by doctors. So that means doctors don't have the supremacy of diagnosis anymore, right?
Yeah.
So I personally, I believe the value of the doctor is really the patient-doctor relationship, and being a counselor and an advisor to a patient with all the complexity information they have to digest, and they may not be able to digest everything, but we would be here to hold hands, right? But that means the doctor may not make the final decision anymore. So that's going to shift so much the dynamic.
I'm not sure about that. I think because there is a tool that can more accurately and faster than before diagnose whatever it is for a patient, that doesn't mean that it strips the doctor of the decision of how to administer that care. That's just a speed to input for the doctor. Like we should be building a partnership that enables AI to empower humans and empower human decision making. I don't believe in the replacement of human decision making.
I don't either. Yeah, absolutely.
I think
I was more thinking about the patient will have a lot more power and a lot more say in the decision because they have a lot more information they didn't have before.
Yeah, and then it becomes the doctor's ability to translate that information and provide choices to the patient. But that can apply to almost anything, right? Like I think we need to be able to speed up the rate in which and the way in which we make informed and coordinated decisions. And because of our immense complexity, no matter what you're looking at, because we just have built all of this complexity because of the bureaucracy that we have needed to build to run our society, that we'll be able to extract that better, organize it better, and enable and empower human decision-making at a faster rate in a more coordinated way is how I see it, right? Like that's where I believe AI could be helpful, in a big way. We'll see how it evolves and how we get there.
Yeah, it's going fast though. It's going really fast.
It's going a little too fast because we still don't have data rights as individuals. Mm-hmm. So talk about new classes of responsibility that come with every new technology.
Yeah.
I didn't need the right to my own human ingenuity and the right to how Zach's brain works uniquely until generative AI hit the scene, because they can take this recording, they can use my voice, they'll be able to regenerate my likeness visually.
It's crazy.
And I don't currently have rights or protections against my human ingenuity. I could be giving talks in 50 different places around the world right now and not know it.
Yeah, so I'll share something that has been very insightful recently. I have a friend, very dear friend, who is a hair and makeup artist, and he's been testing AI on a regular basis by refining very precise description of what he wants. Mm-hmm. And a good example was like a lady that is this and that, and she's that type of age, and she's classy, and she's having her dog. She's walking in the streets of Paris, and you can see it's very, very detailed. And then he shows the output on his Facebook. And the output, sometimes you look at it and you're like, hold on a second. Is this like, you have to look at all the details to find like maybe a nail that's a little bit crooked and that's not true.
Yeah.
But the most when I had a real like epiphany about this is one day he didn't post the whole newsletter and say this was my prompt and this is the output. Yeah. He put one photo, and the photo was an old lady, obviously in India or Nepal, wearing tons of tattoos on her skin and a very nice like orange garment. And I was like, seriously, in my head, I was like, well, at least we know that one's real. Yeah. And then a week later, he showed the whole prompt with all the outputs, and she was part of it. And I was like, no.
Yeah,
I couldn't make a difference.
Yeah. And that's moving very quickly. I mean, there's a very interesting, I'm like an avid reader. I truly believe that like knowledge is like compounding interest. And the way that you grow is you continue to layer knowledge until you unlock perspective, and perspective shifts your mindset. So like I'm constantly layering. But one of the books I read that I like to recommend to people is called 2041, AI 2041. And it's actually written right before it was released, right before AI, generative AI and ChatGPT truly hit the scene. But it's written in partnership by a leading AI scientist and a renowned science fiction novelist. And the science fiction novelist projects what the world is in 2041 based off of projections of how these new age technologies of the Internet of Things and quantum computing and AI might progress.
And that's like tomorrow. 2041 is around the corner.
And then
what
and
happens?
Then the scientist breaks down exactly what the technology is, where we are today, and how we might get there, and how quickly we might get there.
Oh my God.
And it's very, very interesting to learn about how you actually might get to a world where deep fakes can't be, you can't know if it's fake or not. Wow. Because, and there's all these technical terms, and it's very interesting to project the world out like that, because it does make you feel like you're living in a science fiction novel, because we kind of are in the rising of a science fiction novel. And it's exciting. But
I mean, we have theoretically, it's not theoretical anymore. We have self-driving taxis.
Yeah.
Out there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in certain circumstances, but it exists already.
Yeah. Some of this stuff is very, very interesting. They go through education, they go through insurance, they go through virtual reality, where they have, automated vehicles as rescue teams, and people drive as if it's a video game, and there's, but they're actually driving real people out of rescue situations. There's all of these different things that are very interesting thought exercises of projecting and extrapolating what the world could be based off of the technology that we have today.
So it goes back to what do we do with it, right? And what is the good we can do with things like that? And even with virtual reality, we've had the Oculus for a while. When you can put a scene in 3D in virtual reality to someone to explain what it feels like to be on the war front, to explain what it's like, or to help a surgeon on the war front do a surgery remotely, and that's already happening, and be able to have assistants, colleagues from the other end of the planet help you with that surgery because you don't have the expertise where you are. I think that's fascinating.
I think one of the interesting use cases of virtual reality is building a different skill that I believe we are lacking in, and it's empathy. I think we have extracted empathy out of our world more and more, so that less and less people truly have empathy. And if you're able to truly have somebody experience what somebody else is feeling and seeing and experiencing, that could be an interesting way to train empathy, right? Like, I always tell people that, like, I don't just read academically, I read fiction, because fiction forces you to walk in the shoes of somebody that you may or may not ever resonate with, but you understand how,
and see it from their perspective.
See it from their perspective. And I think it's vital, because most people don't spend any time walking in other people's shoes, and then they also ignore the conversations they have with themselves, which ends up in a place where you don't really have the level of empathy we all need.
And it goes back to your first conversation we had around awareness, self-awareness, and understanding where we are and what card do we have in our hands.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can't believe it, but it's been an hour already. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I mean, we always knew this was going to fly. This was fun.
Yeah, we rarely take a full hour when we talk one-on-one, because we're already quite busy. So it's great. But we can't miss the third question, though. And the third question is, okay, Zach Fink. And by the way, I want to tell everybody, this name, which we had a conversation about before we started the event, I've always seen you as someone who will be a public figure. I know you want to write a book. I'm pretty sure you'll write more than one. But I also know, with the energy you have and such empathy and innovative thinking, that you have to be on stage one day. Like, when is your TED Talk? Like, when, when are we going to see Zach Fink, who actually sounds like a superhero name or an actor? So we talked about your purpose. What's the headline there? I want to know that.
I genuinely appreciate that energy and all those nice words. We have very honestly, we spend our days in back-to-back calls, and sometimes in the position of leadership, it can feel lonely and like you're getting punched at all day. To even just hear those nice words, it's genuinely, I appreciate that. I have no idea if I'm a superhero or not. I've never thought of my name that way, but I will take it. I think a TED Talk could be cool. I am a writer. I write cathartically. It's how I dump my brain out. And I do aspire to write both, academically, business oriented and fiction, as I just said.
Oh, right? Awesome. Yeah.
But I think we actually have covered a lot of the messages to the world of like, my advice to people is like, don't speed past an opportunity to have a deep conversation with yourself, because the best thing you can do for anybody in your life is to work on yourself and to get better and to understand yourself better. The second thing I would say is like, no one does anything alone. We have all of these stories and these TV shows and these things that we watch where it's like this lone person who works through adversity and everything was against them, and it's not how the world works.
Mm-hmm.
I would not be anywhere close to where I am without tons of people in my life. It takes a village. And I find one of the biggest fallacies is people scared to ask for help, when most people actually love to be asked to help somebody, especially when they care about that person.
Love it.
And then, everything comes in threes, like the three things with Dr. B. But I think the last thing I would say is, no matter what business you're in, you're probably talking about the word transformation. You're probably even working on one. And I would try to flip the script on that.
Yeah, I might have to change my title, because I call myself a life transformation coach. Man,
on my LinkedIn right now, I'm a managing director of a practice that is operating model strategy and transformation. It's because we don't have another word right now, and people aren't ready to embrace the term evolution.
Evolution, yeah, evolution makes sense.
Change is constant, and change is happening.
Yes,
whether you like it or not.
Yes.
You are not going to know what that change is. So you can put a plan on the transformation scorecard today, and it's probably not going to come true as you drafted it up. And it requires you to be more adaptive and much more tied to your strategy and what your strategic objectives are. And it's not the things on the scorecard that are against the AOP. It's tied to the purpose of what your company is. And if you can't articulate that, because a lot of companies can't,
right,
then you should start asking those questions. And even if they're going to make people that you work for uncomfortable, you're going to make a difference.
Yeah. And the purpose is rarely money.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
It doesn't have to be. Every company is saying that they need to be purpose-led and like purpose-driven. And sure.
Vision and mission. And
that should just be a marketing ploy. Because most companies are just coming up with a marketing ploy. And it shouldn't be. It should be tied to actually, what is this company on the planet for? And if you can't get behind that mission, then you got to ask yourself, what drives you?
Yeah.
So the more tough conversations anybody can have, the better off the world is, because we get better through tough conversations. And that's how I look at humanity, I think.
So know yourself. Don't do it alone. Coordination is key, and ask for help. There's no shame in that. Awesome.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, it was a pleasure to talk to you as long as we did. And I hope our next one-on-one will be as long and as interesting. And thank you so much, Zach, for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. And this was just a lot of fun. And, I'm sure we'll chat soon. But
thank you.
We will talk soon. Later.
Bye.